I'm just going to be still for 15 seconds. No, kidding. Okay, any questions for Mark or Sandy?
Everybody wants to get it out of here.
Do we? Oh, we're waiting on the mic. She's running though. It's good. Oh, I could do it.
Well, I was going to give that.
Is that what you were doing? Sarah, do it yourself.
I don't know how to turn it off.
Turn it on.
They're controlled in the back of the room.
Check.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh. Thanks for that lovely talk. So relevant and important. Early on, you had mentioned a self-assessment for healthcare workers and given a website. Can you give that again?
Oh, that was the Sharp Index. Sharpindex.org is what Janae Sharp put together. Yeah. And there's also, that's for this. And there's also you guys put depression screens on your intake forms for patients? You can take it yourself. Yeah, there's Roll et al. Is the author on 2 papers, the 3-screen depression screen, and then the second paper was for a 1-question follow-up about do you want help today? But Roll, Arroll et al. I think it's 2011. Don't quote me on that. But there's a 3-question depression screen that you can put on your intake form. Super simple, very sensitive and specific for depression.
Or the DAS works nicely. Oh, the DAS. Work depression and anxiety scale, and the pain catastrophizing scale. If you're scoring over 30 on that yourself too, please talk to someone.
I think American Richard has the mic. Do you have the mic? Yep.
Hi, American Richard here. I'm also Asian, Hispanic, and
But not Canadian.
no,
Just different.
FOMO. We work in many realms, and in our many realms, we see many intentions, or we sense many intentions coming from our colleagues or people across the aisle. How do we handle being misinterpreted in our own intention when we have a positive message and we feel like we're doing our good work?
With persistence and patience and courage and compassion. Because it's going to happen, and your best intentions will be taken poorly. And again, that's where you say, are you standing on your core values? Can you do a check? Look in the mirror. Was that you stepping on someone else on purpose? Was it on accident? Or did you just bump boundaries? And do you really need to cede? Or is it okay for you to hold your space?
And I think those 4 words can be unpacked perfectly, right? I mean, those are the perfect 4 words for that. Compassion, caring, persistence, and patience.
Other questions in the room or online? Richard, here.
American Richard, please hand her the mic.
I was giving it the finish.
Oh.
No, yeah, of course.
Okay. Thank you so much. Very relevant and appreciated. How long was your turnaround and recovery into self-care and recovering from burnout?
Me?
Either.
Yep.
It's ongoing. Yeah, it's ongoing. Life has things. That has an awful lot to do with whether I've heard from my son recently and what's going on in the world, because it's a big stressor for me. You raise your kids to be independent, and then they do.
Damn kids. So I left my job. I quit. So I had to get out of the situation that was causing me to kill myself. And then the turnaround, it was pretty rapid. Once I got out of the situation that was not good for my health, it was just a slow transition, but it was a rapid change. But the changes that I then had to make emotionally and take away my stress eating, take away my stress drinking, borderline alcoholism, because I relied on it. It took a while. But it's been over the past 4 years that I can consider myself a recovered burnout.
Yay!
I have been in burnout, and I probably am in it now due to a bunch of life factors that are out of my control. The difficulty in doing massage for over 30 years, it's a very isolating job. Several years ago, I went to work in a spa, which helped a bit, but to see one person at a time for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours, first looks really great on paper, but at the end of the day, it's not. So, and I really appreciate this talk, because I've been where you've been, Mark, and left jobs. So how do we un-isolate ourselves as massage therapists when we're working in isolation?
Can I restate that to how do we as humans un-isolate ourselves? Find a hobby. That sounds so trite, but really find something you love and be engaged in it. We were having a talk about this, of doing the things that you really care about and spend time caring about them. And it can be short little things, like Bronnie and I talk a lot about this, of pleasure snacks with our people in pain, of do something every day that you enjoy and really make it sensual and fun. I don't know that it matters so much as what it is.
Well, I think somebody made the point yesterday, actually, yeah, or somebody made the point that their company didn't want them associating or talking to or connecting with their patients or their clients, right? So how do you find a connection with a person that you're spending an hour with in a fairly intimate setting, experiencing a healing session, and then expecting not to connect? Is a dichotomous situation that would be extremely frustrating to be in. And in the clinic, when that would happen, I found myself not treating people by themselves at one time. I had to integrate and be in a busier space to have those emotional connections and busyness that kept me out of the space of being like, man, this is just freaking boring. Or I can't sing that song in my head another time, right? So I think, to Sandy's point, is to create that love of something outside of it. But when you're in that space and you're by yourself, that's a challenging topic. I don't think does anybody have a suggestion there? I mean, I think that's a real question. How do you manage? I mean, that's a great question. How do you manage yourself and connect with yourself when you're so disconnected?
Okay. There's actually, so we're going to online next, and then there's someone in the back, and Katie also, and who just had their hand over here. Amy did. So we have a lot. So online, please.
It's on? Is it on? Okay. Brian Rutledge asks, as someone who's at stage 11 of 12 of burnout, I'm very interested to know what the defined stages of burnout recovery are. Thanks.
Nice.
Yes, Brian was here. That's Brian.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
Brian.
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 Hey, Brian. We miss you here. Wish you were here. Question specifically about resources for people that are at stage 11 and 12.
And what are the
Stages of recovery?
Oh, what are the stages of recovery?
What are the defined stages of burnout recovery?
Oh,
Burnout recovery. Yeah.
that's a good question. I don't know them off the top of my head. I don't know. In all of my research, I didn't see a defined recovery stage. What was it for me? Whew. I think if I think about it, they followed a similar path to the stages of loss, right? I went through a grieving stage. I went through an angry stage. I went through a relieved stage, and then I went into an admittance stage and an acceptance stage, right? I actually went through a very angry stage. I was so pissed at myself. I was angry at myself for gaining 100 pounds, or almost 125 pounds in 7 years, right? And that was the longest stage. And then that's also a very dangerous stage where the self-abuse wraps right into it, right? If I'm angry at myself, I'm just gonna drink a little bit more because I feel better, right? That makes sense, fuck. Right, but I think those were my stages that very similarly passed along the stages of loss. Yeah. For you?
And I'm just going to reinstate the courage, commitment, compassion, patience, persistence, because it's going to go forward like that, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and then the yelling at yourself. I'm really good at doing that.
Yeah, it's a wavy line that slowly, the average increases, but there's some dips.
So, Brian, I'm trying to think if there are any.
Yeah.
And I can't Google right now, but I will put that on the San Diego Pain Summit Facebook page if I find an actual answer.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. Oh, we have like 4 people in line, sorry. Okay, Kate.
Thank you both. More of a comment and some additional resources. Just when you said pleasure snacks, Sandy, I'm sure people who took Ben's course have heard him say movement snacks. And I interact with a lot of people, including my inner circle family, who get intimidated by the recommendations for health and movement 30 minutes a day, right? How do I do that? But you can do it in small doses, and there are lots of ways to get creative. And so the resource I wanted to share was someone I followed for a long time on social media and inspires my thought process a lot. Her name is Katy Bowman, K-A-T-Y. Bowman, if you don't know her. Movement Matters is a hashtag on Instagram, but she offers a lot of ways to just make movement fun and build movement for the sake of movement into your day, into your life. And she's a biomechanist, so for the geeks in you, it's interesting on that level too. And so she talks about movement being healthy for cells on the cellular level, deforming each cell wall, and how that's building resilience, and how stress is a positive effect. So, another way to think about movement is just, can you change the way your file system is set up? How you get to your patient files? Where you chart if you have to document? Can you lay down? Can you do push-ups? All these things. It's easier than we think, but if you can be inspired to make a game of it too, I think we're more likely to do it.
Yeah, the data is really amazing on movement. The current exercise guidelines came out a month and a half ago. The guidelines for movement for health, and it's 21 minutes a day, decreases your all-risk early mortality by 50%, right? 21 minutes a day. That's all you got to do, right? But there's
Hashtag I moved today.
Hashtag I moved today. But there's also physiological changes for pain as well that we know that you can also move. But there's great data to support movement. So again, finding those ways, movement snacks, I like that.
Well, and to go back to the what do you do when you're working hour after hour in isolation, can you put those people a little bit further apart and do some movement in between? Well, get some burlesque dancing going in your space.
That'd be awesome.
That's the next conference. Okay, I thought I saw a hand in the back. No, okay, because then Amy, and then Jason, and then you. Okay, I see you. Okay. Amy, can you raise your hand, please? Thanks.
Sorry, guys, it's not so much a question as an observation. When I read that list, I see myself in chronic pain.
Stressors on the body and the mind. And the
so I love the question, how do you stop being so isolated? And I'm going to ask you to think about what you would tell a patient or a client, and then turn that back on yourself.
Self-reflection, that was beautiful.
Awesome. Okay. I'll give it to Jason. I have a closer distance.
I'm very disappointed that country of origin is not being announced for every...
Jason Erickson, Minnesotan.
Minnesota.
United States. I've been in and out of various stages of burnout. I don't think I've ever hit 11 or 12, but I've been at different points along the spectrum over the years, and I found that there's certain things that work for me, and it's been a while since I visited that curve, but I see colleagues. There's people I work with. There's people that I interact with in other venues. And so I think about like, what can, if I recognize that going on with someone else, what might be a good way to address that, or whether to bring it to their attention or if they express something to me, how can I respond to that?
I'm going to say a disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor, so this is just Sandy the human answering that question. One of the tricks for when you're really in a dark place is that it's really hard to get out of it yourself. And when someone says, hey, let's go out to dinner, that'll be great, you're like, no, because it's hard to move. So there's some really great resources online. We talked about them. There's so just good, like cartoons and humor can help, as I've mentioned, but there's an artist, I'm trying to remember their name, they do a beautiful series about, you might just need to go sit with them and just say, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee and phrase it so that it's a little challenging to let inertia be the answer for why it's refused, and just sit there. You don't even have to do anything, just be there. Because people, like our patients and clients, they need to feel safe to talk about it, and these things feel very vulnerable, and like there'll be a lot of rejection.
The one word that comes to mind that I've had personal experience with other colleagues is connect. Is trying to connect to them, like Sandy said, in some way that allows them to feel safe in order to communicate with you. You've got to set up the same therapeutic alliance with your colleagues that you would with a patient, and being there to connect and being a trusted source. And it could be as simple as, hey, how are you doing today? And like, let that be that for that day, or just interact and be there for that person and open yourself up for that person to see you as a trusted source, but connect.
You've heard the phrase herding cats, right? The best way to herd a cat is to sit down and pretend you don't want it around you.
So true.
That's a Army family team building thing is you don't have to chase someone, you just create an opportunity for them to be in a space that feels good.
Yeah.
And that alone can be that, like, wow, today didn't suck, which is a really good place to stand on if you've lost your edge.
And it also depends on your relationship with that person. I've had, so you can see weight gain over time. That's what I saw. I had a colleague like, dude, what's going on, man? Are you sick? Like, why are you gaining so much weight? Like, they literally called me on it. So, I mean, it depends on the relationship you have with the person. If they're a close personal friend, or you can have a little bit of an edgier point of entry to them and what's going on. Like, man, you don't look good. What the hell's going on with you?
His friend was not nice, which is great.
Right.
So those times when you're like, does this look good? And people say, yeah, you look fantastic. And then you look in a mirror or a picture later and you're like, I looked like crap.
Right.
And all of these people told me I looked fantastic. Were lying to me.
Yeah.
And that's not nice. That's unnice.
Right. Being honest without compassion is cruelty, right?
Well, that's a happy note to end on.
Woo! San Diego Pain Summit 2019! Wow!
Get off the stage, you people suck.